He's actually in long-term recovery himself. So he is going to share kind of a little bit of his story, a little bit about addiction and what we do at Long Branch, and what, you know, happens at rehab and what happens when people go. So I just want to, you know, he's awesome. He came into my life about a year and a half ago and started working for Long Branch. And he's an inspiration in the way he likes to help people and get out there, so I asked him to speak. So, Howland, please come. Thank you.
Everyone hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for inviting me. Linda is my work mom, so I'm sure she'll have plenty to say about my shirt being untucked, but I really do appreciate you guys inviting me, and being able to offer resources within a community is such an important part of what we try to do, but I think one of the things I've learned over the last few years is lacking so much just all over. People not knowing where to find resources and what resources match for what they need. Whether it's insurance or finances or their specific, you know, medical or mental health issues. It's a pretty complicated system out there, and finding where the right match is can be difficult. And so being able to link people with resources is just a really important deal. I am a New Orleans kid, a spoiled little uptown boy, and I was on January 8th, so 4 days ago in 2009, my life was saved. Whatever divine forces came together, I found myself in a detox facility in New Orleans. It was the last time alcohol or drugs ever entered my system. Prior to that, it was dark. For me, you know, it looked like intravenous drugs, heroin. Prior to that, you know, it was a slow, steady progression of drugs. You know, I come from a good family in New Orleans, and you know, I had a broken home, parents divorced when I was young, but great education, didn't want for anything. There was always kind of a sense of feeling a little bit different. Why were other people's families, you know, together? Why were other people, why were the other, you know, kids, why did their houses look, you know, different? I always struggled in school, but it wasn't until, I guess, getting to high school or so where I started having a lot of behavioral issues, a lot of acting out. It was around 15 or 16 where I really started getting in a lot of trouble, and I started experimenting with alcohol, I think probably about 13, 14. I do remember the experience for me was like instantaneous in that whatever pain I was experiencing, whatever, it immediately went away. In that moment for me, whatever the uncomfortable feelings, whatever the emotions that I had always been trying to escape or that made me so upset or sad that I had no idea what to do with. You know, I had no mature therapeutic coping skills at that age or anything. They just disappeared. They vanished. And that is an epiphany, you know, right? That is a transformational experience when you've been in a lot of pain. From that point, I remember having the experience of saying, I'm going to seek this out and do this as much as I can so that I don't have to feel the way that I feel, which is terrible. My entire, you know, experience through high school was just that. It was drinking and doing drugs to the best of my ability. I was pretty good at it. And it just got me in a lot of trouble, obviously. I mean, I'm sure some of you either been through it yourselves or had loved ones go through it, but it was DUIs and arrests. And for the most part, I think the hardest part looking back on it for me has always been what I put my family through. My mom, I can still cry if I think about it long enough. It's been a while, but putting her through such suffering, and the hard part is I don't know if I could have done anything different if I wanted to. I had no desire to continue to hurt her. I had no desire to have my little sister see me come home every night in that condition, to deplete their resources, to have these ugly, violent episodes, but I did not know how to not do that. And that's really scary. To hurt the people you love the most and have no idea how to not do that. I, fortunately enough, after bouncing around a couple high schools, made it to the University of Alabama. I apologize. It was only for a semester. I was asked by the president of the college to please not return. It was a pretty fun semester, but it was not, it was bad. So I got arrested like 3 times that semester because I was gonna quit doing drugs and be just a good alcoholic frat boy, and that didn't go well. Came home, tried to do, I was like, I'm gonna go and get my act together and go to school, and very quickly I had the same experience I remember, and to be more specific, the experience I had when I tried alcohol at about 14, and I said, oh my God, all my suffering has gone away. Like whatever this feeling is that I can't stand, and that feeling is existence, right? It's like when I wake up, this thing that's just with me, just all of a sudden disappears. I felt the suffering has gotten only worse and worse and worse, and when I, for the first time, get introduced to intense opiates, it just totally melts. And the attractiveness and the beauty and the euphoria I felt by that was just, there was no chance. I remember the first time trying them in this particular way, snorting a certain type of opioid and going, oh, I'll never, this is done. I'll never make it out of this. Like this is what my future looks like for a while. And thankfully it wasn't very long. I'm a bit of an outlier in that I'm very, very fortunate and blessed to have gotten into recovery really young. But I would go down that road for about a year, and that would go from prescription opiates into heroin. And there's just a lot of pain and suffering, obviously, through that whole time. But I ended up on January 8th, 2009, just in a detox. My mom had finally gotten some support, because, man, she was an enabler. I was just her sweet baby boy, right? She didn't know any better. She was literally, as they say, loving me to death. Sweet Italian lady, just, she would give me money so that I wouldn't be sick. She would, there was the idea of kicking me out or holding any boundaries was just ludicrous, right? Like, why would I cause my child harm? Like, it was just, she was doing what she knew and she didn't know any better. She eventually got a little bit of support and took advantage of a moment where I was just really sick and would have done anything to not feel as sick as I was, and said, you ready? And I said, yeah. I took advantage of her being a little sick too. I knew she had $200 in her hidden in a wallet. I said, if you give me that $200, let's go. And sure enough, we went. And the experience that I had there, What I discovered is that this solution to what they offered, at least in introduction, was like a solution that involved, you don't have to suffer like this anymore. It is not going to be easy. It will be an intense amount of work, but the way you've been trying to reduce and take care of your suffering has a lot of consequences. It's not working. It seems to be, in many ways, making your suffering a whole lot worse. There is another way. And you don't ever have to feel the way you feel right now, but it's going to be really hard. And that was interesting to me. That was about as far as I could go at that point, but it was interesting. I got out of there. I eventually went through, the levels of care and treatment we talk about, which is going to outpatients, and we have intensive outpatients, and I'd been in the detox for a while, and I then got hooked up with the 12-step community, and there was just this group of people who showed me an unbelievable amount of love. They were just altruistic men and women who were like, "Hey, dude, you have no idea what you're talking about. You're 20 years old. You were completely full of your still I can't carry it's gonna be hard. You think very highly of yourself, and you need to just listen, man. Just come on and let us help." And that, for a 20-year-old who is so scared and so lost and has no idea what to do, because the only thing he's ever known to do was use drugs and drink because he's in so much pain. It's a lot. It's powerful. Thankfully, they carried a message to me that was transformative. Looking back on it, I now see that all of the things that were happening at that time, the work I was doing with the, programs I was in that involved, medications, the work I was doing in 12 steps with that community and with my spirituality, the family work I was doing, all of these things were working together at the same time, but I was just kind of plodding ahead, and it would eventually form the new foundation for what would become a completely new life, something I would have never envisioned or imagined would become what I have now, right? I'm a alcoholic junkie who's got a life that doesn't even make sense. It's so stupid in how beautiful it is. I've been afforded such an incredible opportunity and a second chance that it doesn't make sense. And I'm very, very fortunate and blessed for that. But it's, in the 12 steps we say it's contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. And so part of that for me is continuing to work and be of service and to give back so that I can, in fact, I can stay in a position that enables me to live this way. Obviously that's kind of how I found my way into this career, but the first thing for me that was kind of important was understanding that I'm just biologically different than other people. The way I react to alcohol and drugs is just fundamentally different than the way other people do. That requires from me some level of acceptance that I have to figure out a different way, because I'm never going to change my biology. I'm never going to change the way my genetics just react to these substances. And so if I So what am I going to do with that? Then it's a question of, well, am I willing to submit to whatever it may be that this new solution that's being presented to me is? And does it have the potential to do with my life what I hope it can, what I need from it? Or is it going to in fact be, is it going to fall short? And then am I willing to even do it, or is it just not going to be adequate? Because what I needed was purpose and meaning and drive and something that held weight, because I was just lost. I was about as lost as you could be. And I think one of the things that's really troubling or that's tough about this disease is the symptoms of it are not, it's not just a rash. It isn't, a oozing or some, type of ailment that is purely medical. It comes out as a spiritual malady. It comes out behaviorally. It comes out as, hurting our family or hurting the people we care about or squandering opportunities. It comes out as not being present with our loved ones as we would want to be. It comes out as, it comes out in all these different ways that we traditionally don't think about disease symptoms. And so, obviously there's still a lot of work to be done in regard to the stigma and everything, but also when we start to think about the treatment of a disease like this, it's the same thing. It's not a pill yet. It's not a singular, treating just the rash or taking just this this pill. It's a holistic and comprehensive treatment of everything. It requires, the family. It requires, in many instances, the medication and the doctors and the therapist and the various things, and maybe most importantly, the spirituality, the reformatting of how you view life, like a new perspective. That is pretty hard to communicate from a medical standpoint, right? It's not your traditional disease model, and so that I think is where it gets tricky. I got out of college. It took me about 8 years to get a degree in how to work at a hotel desk, and I decided I didn't want to do that. So I did stuff for a while and realized that the only thing I was ever really interested in was human behavior of the mind and helping people. So I went and got a graduate degree in counseling and pursued becoming a therapist. And, by chance, someone I knew was starting this new thing, and I had known him from recovery, and he said, you should come help. And it turned into what became Long Branch, and I got involved, before we took our first client. I applied for, a job that was not what it became, and it ended up becoming, I serve as the admissions director, and so it's not what I was planning on it becoming. But they've been very supportive of, me finishing school and my direction, but it kind of became the perfect play situation for me because it allowed me to be of service in a way that it played on my ability to kind of help and talk to people on the front end and steer them where I think they needed to go. Those are some of the hardest days of their lives when they call. They are generally in some form of crisis, and just helping point them in the right direction is it's important. And And then again, connecting those resources, like I mentioned earlier, it's huge. Every day I talk to people, they just have no idea what or where or how any of this works. It's, okay, so I have Aetna. What does that mean? I have a United policy, but it's medicated. But I'm on this medication, and I have a disability, like, where does that person go? Because it's limited. That being able to kind of navigate, my dad is an alcoholic, and he got sober. He was not really very present in my life. 6 years old, my parents got divorced. He wasn't an abusive alcoholic. He was just one that wasn't ever present. And once the divorce happened, he got banished to Metairie, which is, when you're a good uptown boy, about as bad as it gets. He got banished to Metairie, and we'd go over there on weekends, and then eventually that just kind of faded away. And, it was one of those, the vodka went from, Grey Goose to Absolute to, plastic Taka, and it just less and less present. Until, one night where I was, he called, he had made an attempt to take his life. His wife at the time called me and said, help. They ended up calling the police. He was in the tub. He had, tried to cut his wrist, and they took him to, I guess, charity. I don't know if it was still charity at the time, but a hospital. I guess it was Oxford Baptist-ish, but anyway. And I went and picked him up, and I took him to get coffee at PJ's, and then I took him to a meeting, and he hasn't had a drink or drug since that day, and that was about 10 years ago. No, 11 years ago. He got sober literally 1 year after me, February 25th. So he's got a birthday coming up. But I mention that because one of our favorite expressions that he gave me is, God don't grow. And I have a very big plaque in my house from whoever that obnoxious, I shouldn't say obnoxious, the artist who does all the funky art in New Orleans that everyone's like, oh yeah, Simone or Dr. Bob or one of them. But he got one made for me and it says, God don't grow. The idea being, he will steer the ship, right? He will point in the right direction, but all the work has to be done by you. You have to row the boat. And that expression has always really meant a lot to me and kind of motivated me to continue to move in the directions that I've moved. Which, when I got this opportunity with Long Branch, it was the first time I really felt like, hey, this is my opportunity to be of service in a way that is meaningful. While I loved helping decorate tables and at weddings, being a wedding planner was not for me. I did not have much of an eye for matching, I was thrusted into that position. It was bad though. I lasted a few weeks. It wasn't much I loved managing a movie theater, but I didn't want to do that forever. And I found there was something passionate for me about this work. So what I have found really early is that the most important thing to me is if someone calls, we are able to put them somewhere. Of the people who give us a call, I would say maybe there was the Lord. Of the people that call us, maybe 20%, 15% are viable, candidates for our program in regard to what insurances they have that are accepted and the length of stay and all the various variables that make this thing so complicated. But the most important thing that we've always stated is that no matter what, they get the referrals or placement to go to treatment. Everyone deserves a shot at getting well, and it's a scary, scary disease. It takes from people the things they love most. And I'm talking to someone right now who, again, I talk to people on some of the worst days of their life for the most part. I was saying last night in this group that I run for families, I was late, and the group's pretty disorganized anyway, but I was running late, and it was because I was talking to someone that was in a family that was in crisis, and I was like, maybe one day I'll find a job where I talk to people on like some of their best days. I don't know what that job is, but like maybe the guy who hands people the big checks at like events, or just announces like in stadiums when you win, you're the person who wins, whatever, but it'll be nice to be on the other side sometimes. However, I'm talking to someone that I grew up with. We treated their mother, who was very successful with us, but he's lost everything. He did well for a while, but he's totally devastated. Gets it together for a little bit, but arrested, massive drug charge. But the pain in his heart is what you hear, right? It's not the specifics is less whatever. Okay, there's these important metrics that are important variables to the situation and trying to get someone home. But the pain in his voice and his heart, you don't forget it. It's terrifying. It's someone who is on the edge, that this is it for them. They're close to either ending their life, going on as hard of a bender as they can because they know nothing else but to just take away their suffering the only way they know how, or the best way they know how. Or accept help. And yeah, it's rough. Because if you could press the button, I use the button, metaphor a lot. If you could press the button and this goes away, everyone's going to press it. There's nothing, while it serves, you can do a functional analysis on it, right? And there's this defense mechanism and protective reasons and with euphoric, property, but there's nothing about this once it gets to a certain stage that anyone wants. It sucks. If we could press a button and make it go away, by the time they get to a facility like ours, they would. So, how do you treat it? Well, there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different philosophies. The most important part is kind of figuring out, I'm not sure what direction to go here, but when someone calls me, the first thing is, what do they need? It is an assessment of their situation, because I know that very quickly I need to figure out what is there, what is not there, what is viable, what is not viable, what is an emergency, what isn't, and then get them placed. Like I said, whether it's with us or another program, that's most important to admissions in my department is that if you call looking for help, you get help. So I've had to learn a lot about this field and industry, and it changes every minute, and it's so confusing, and if you've got a little squirrel brain like mine, it's very, very, very hard to keep up with. you know, insurance policies changing and billing and all of that, but yeah, what's the situation? Okay, you've got a son. He wants help, but he's resistant. What kind of insurance policy does he have? Let's look at the benefits. You know, what's the best fit for him? Does he need, you know, a full medical detox stabilization? Is he appropriate for an outpatient program? Who's in network? Who's out of network? You know, there's a lot of things that go into this process, but the most important thing that I've found is it's not about the mechanics of that. It's being there to hear somebody and listen to someone. You hope the outcome is them being in treatment, but what's been so surprising, I think, for me has been the person who's calling almost always just wants to be heard and have someone listen and have somebody who understands, which for a lot of people, maybe it's the first time someone's truly like been able to understand the situation there. That has either is listening to someone who's had someone been where they've been, or has someone who understands what their family's going through. And so in the event someone is able to come to our program, and we have a few programs. We have what are called intensive outpatient programs, where we have one in Covington and one in New Orleans. But we also have a residential facility where clients live at the facility, and that's in Abita Springs. If they're appropriate for the residential facility, meaning they need, you know, to be detoxed medically, they're physically dependent on the substances, or it's what's going to give them the best opportunity to be successful, meaning the outpatient is really like a transitional level of care where they're able to build upon either what they've done in residential, or they pose no, you know, medical risk, and being in an environment where they're still living at home is appropriate. They get, after these assessments and making sure everyone's clear, they come into the facility, and our, you know, our philosophy and how long am I supposed to talk to? 8, okay. Oh, we'll figure this out. We'll do,
You don't have to go there.
well, we'll do questions, and I got a whole routine that we're working on. Our program has kind of 4, I call them like our 4 tenets, and it's mind, body, spirit, family. Mind is, we conceptualize it as the work you're doing in therapy. So working with, you know, a therapist, individually, group, and so you're in group therapy every day, you're working with an individual therapist, you are working with, you know, an addictionologist, so a physician who is certified in addiction medicine, as well as we have a psychiatrist, and that team, that treatment team is kind of focusing on, you know, how we conceptualize the mind. With body, we have a pretty comprehensive wellness program where our wellness instructor, they're doing yoga 4 days a week, and we have a studio there, and they're building a yoga practice is really important to us. Pretty impressive, like nutritional program that we follow. We have like a walking and a running program. We bring in a trainer for some like body weight stuff, and the idea there being the mind-body connection is really important. Something that I think gets overlooked a lot in treatments, the awareness of our bodies in space, how we feel and how we think, and how that relates to where we are in our bodies. So we don't need to go down too far that rabbit hole right now, unless, then again, I have another half hour. With spirit, is, you know, we're not shy. We use a lot of 12-step work and what we do. That is how, in that path, how the point of the 12 steps essentially is to have a spiritual experience that revolutionizes your whole life and outlook towards God and His universe, right? It's a higher power, it's developing a relationship with a higher power. That relationship evolves. The way we do that's pretty intense. It's, I guess you'd say it's not like fluffy 12-step work. It's you're doing it, right? You're working the steps. You're the dude who did it for us, and he's obnoxiously intense. It's conceptually, philosophically, intellectually intense, but also God don't row. You got to do the stuff, and so you do it. The last one's family. So for us, that involves a family workshop that we do. It's a 3-day family workshop. The last day you're with your loved one. Pretty heavy. I run a family group every Monday night that's available to family members. There's usually some family counseling sessions in there. With COVID, things have gotten wonky, so there used to be visitation on Sunday, and obviously there's a lot of resources and stuff that we give them, but those 4 tenets coming together and working together as one unified treatment is, for us, how we think about the solution. It is the pill, right? It's the lisinopril for the high blood pressure. I guess with high blood pressure, you also need Eprel, so it's a bad analogy. But the treatment for alcoholism and drug addiction it's spiritual, it's behavioral, it's medical, it's nutritional, it's psychological, it's a lot of different things. And so that makes it a bizarre, uniquely different project than anything else. And that's what I think makes this really tough for the outside world to fully understand, and for parents and loved ones and partners to get their heads around, it's a hot stove. Why would you keep touching it? You went to treatment. Why would you touch it again? It's just really hard. There's a lot of different, philosophies of treatment, and a lot of different philosophies towards different medications and towards different, ways to approach stuff. There's a lot of different recovery communities too. So, there's faith-based communities. There are communities based around Eastern philosophies that are based around, cognitive behavioral therapies. There's lots of communities out there that, it's not just the 12 steps, so it's a much more diverse world out there now in regard to support communities. But, at the end of the day, it's about, there's having to do the work and needing the support, and it's a rough, it's hard. I wish it wasn't, but it's really hard. I've been fortunate enough to have not put alcohol or drugs in my misshapen body for 12 years, but not all of those have been great years. Quite a few of them have been horrible years. You're not given any, it's not all, rainbows and glitter when you get sober. I've just been given enough tools to not, I've decided and made this deal where I can't use alcohol and drugs to reduce and relieve my suffering now, which means I suffer a lot. And when I do suffer, I have to figure out a way to suffer without drinking or doing drugs. And that can be really painful sometimes. Thankfully, through this process, through the people that were there for me and gave me the resources that I needed, that were willing to tell me that, you know, you're way too full of yourself, like just shut up and sit down, we love you, dude. You know, for my mom not knowing what she was doing and then knowing what she was doing, for all the people who played such important roles in my life, it all, you know, eventually kind of comes together, and they hold me up when I'm not as strong. I think the work that I did early on has been the foundation for me that keeps me up when things aren't as well. I've had, like I said, some of the most painful years of my entire life I've been in recovery. And I've also been very unrecovered in recovery. Like, I've been a total jerk. I've been a terrible partner. You know, I've made tons of, you know, poor choices and things that required lots of amends. I can still just be a horrible, terrible, unethical monster if I want in sobriety. It doesn't mean, like, it's just not taking a drink or drug, right? Like, that doesn't, it's what is it to be in recovery, and what is it to live in the solution? For me, the solution involves trying to be of service to others. I have found it's one of the kind of key components. It is a journey of learning about yourself and what the hard truths you don't want to face, and what you have to be mindful of, and what you have to respect, that you can't do that. You suck at that. And that's the thing you have to be mindful of. Like, that's where you have to be careful. But through my position doing admissions and being able to work kind of front and center with families, as that first point of contact, I've come to, especially in St. Tammany, really see what this disease looks like. I have worked with the mothers and the fathers and the individuals. I have spoken to the emergency rooms, the psych hospitals, the police departments, the therapists, and it's scary. And COVID has not made it any better. Long Branch is doing well right now, and it's because of how bad things are, you know. The disease of addiction is I know of none more tragic in the unmanageability of it, I guess. Well, to speak to the community it's really bad. Opiates have devastated this community. I'm sure some of you may know, but St. Tammany has some pretty ugly rates in regard to Narcan overdoses, overdose rates, and things like that. There, you know, St. Tammany ER and stuff. It's a destructive disease, and when you're told to stay at home and not interact with human beings and not be out in the community interacting and supported by other ones, it tends to not get any better. So we're finding that to be really, really difficult right now. It is
the virtual recovery and support, it's cool. I think I personally love it. I'll never go see a doctor again if I can like sit in my room and be in my pajamas. I find it great. But for a lot of people, it's just not sufficient. It's not enough to be looking at a computer screen every single day to get their recovery. Obviously, with the vaccine coming, we hope that this world starts to change a little bit. But I know for me, if it wasn't for walking into this coffee shop at 7 a.m. every morning for, the first 3 years of my life, where those people said, "Shut up, man, sit down," I don't know that I would be here. I don't know that I would have had the support that I needed. I don't know if it wasn't for the treatment center that I went to, where they told me exactly what I needed to hear, which is, you don't ever have to feel this way ever again if you don't want to, but it's going to be really hard. Those were the things that, I still have with me today. I have these little bits and pieces of what has been told to me and given to me by others. And I try to remember those things because maybe I'm going to be one of those things for someone going forward. Maybe the word of encouragement or the piece of advice or the resource that I give someone or the thing I share with them will be the little piece or token or thing that stays with them for their recovery, just like I have mine. I have lots of them, but they're my little tokens and Easter eggs and things that I have over my 12 years in recovery collected that mean everything to me. And so, both being kind of the first point of contact for families in crisis, for representing, the company, and being on the front lines, audio-wise, and apparently not vaccine-wise. I take I find it's an immense privilege, and I take the responsibility incredibly serious to make sure that I have the ability to steer people in the right direction. I can't make them well, but being able to at least guide people one way or the other so that they can hopefully find what I found 12 years ago. As much as I can hopefully ask for. I'm really proud of what I get to be a part of every day. I'm really proud of, I'm proud of myself. It took me a long time in therapy to be able to say that, but it's a different story. I have one of the lines I try to tell people a lot is, right now it sucks, right? You are in so much pain. You cannot imagine what is the other side of this could look like. Because right now it's as horrible as it possibly be, right? You're calling me because you need to get into treatment somewhere and you have burned everything down. Everything's on fire. You are in more pain than you know what to do with. And all you're trying to do is be in a little less pain. But what you may not realize is if you accept help, if you become willing to follow the guidance, to surrender to what the solution may look like for you, whatever that is, the other side of this is as beautiful as anything you've ever seen. The sense of wonder, the richness of your relationships, the depth of meaning and purpose, you'll be lit on fire. It'll you cannot imagine in your wildest dreams what your life could look, feel, and be like, especially right now. But that is the other side of this. Right now you just need to put the next foot in front of the other, but there's another side of this and it's pretty special. And that's something to at least keep in mind as you start this process. So, I don't know if that was connected at all, or I just tried to blend it and make it enough time there at the end to be sufficient. But I'll do questions now if that's a. Do I have enough time for that? How did I do, Nettie?
Holly can take some questions for a while. So, anyone? Questions for Holly?
Yeah, so I know you said you were on heavy opiates, like even heroin, I think. I've done it before, but it's not an issue for me personally. But did you do like the methadone, Suboxone route? Because I've heard that that can be just like a Band-Aid and even hard to get off in the long run.
Yeah, so that's a really controversial, topic in our field, and there's a lot of different. Each treatment center, or many of them, all have their different views on it, right? I did not do any of those routes. They wanted me to. I did basically one of the routes that was naltrexone, which is essentially just the blocker, the antagonist. It doesn't have the essentially like the pseudo opioid in it. Those drugs in certain instances are miracle drugs, but they also there's a lot of side effects, right? Like I think methadone at this point has been a failed project that we have enough evidence in support of that it's just Suboxone's a better alternative to it, but it is at some point you have to get off of that one, and that could be tough. But there are situations and people for whom I think it's a lifesaver. But yeah, I did not go that route. When I went in, they actually did something to me that's not ethical or done anymore, but it's called rapid withdrawals, rapid detox. And they pump you full of this drug, naltrexone, to flush it out of you. 48 hours or so, you are on fire. And a nice nurse comes in and puts some Ativan in your butt, and you fall asleep for a couple minutes, and then you wake up on fire, and then eventually someone comes in and gives you a little more Ativan in the booty. And then in 48 hours, you're pretty much out of like the hardest part, but yeah, that wasn't fun. But yeah, it's a topic that, Long Branch philosophically kind of falls more on the not using that in long-term scenarios, using it maybe in short-term, management of withdrawal symptoms. Other programs believe in it kind of in a more long-term philosophy for brain science, like reasons that have good research behind it. So I don't want to poke either way or the other, but yeah.
I'm just curious, because I've heard that some heroin addicts will go that route, and they'll say it's harder to get off the Suboxone.
Yeah, and many do have that experience.
Okay. I have a second part of this.
Yeah, go.
So for me personally, it's more like cannabis. And I know it doesn't have the withdrawals and not like heroin does. I mean, it isn't like an anxiety reliever and definitely helps. But for me personally, the issue is it's become very socially acceptable. And to avoid it literally means like cutting everyone out of my entire life. Like my brother-in-law, my ex-wife, like every single person in my life I would have to cut out. So to avoid it is extremely difficult,
So, yeah, I mean, that's tough. That's really tough. One thing, though, that was important to me early on was, right, I'm a New Orleans uptown kid, like if the solution to me is that I can't ever be around alcohol again, that's going to be tough. Like, what am I supposed to do? The solution, the way they explained it to me, is if I have this spiritual experience that revolutionizes my life, and I maintain it, if I maintain my spiritual condition, I'm going to be placed in a position of neutrality. And this position of neutrality is going to make it so that I'm not going to have to recoil from it, like I'm not going to, it's not going to be something that I have to hide from. I'm not going to have to, I'm going to have to be smart about it. And for each person, especially people early on in this process, they're going to be far more vulnerable, post-acute withdrawal syndrome, stuff like that. But I did some damage on alcohol, right? Like I had 2 DUIs, I've crashed the car, I've had my jaw broken. Like I just should not drink ever again. But I'm at a place in my life where I can go out with people drinking and know this isn't, I'm okay. And I also know myself well enough now to go, if I'm not okay, I know I need to leave, or I know how to get out of here. Drugs are always a situation where it's a bit different, and with cannabis becoming as popular and as kind of legalized as it is, it's tougher. But I would say the work is, if those are people that you love and you care about, and you want to spend time with, talking to them about what makes you comfortable and uncomfortable and how you want to spend time with them, maybe something. And then, like I said, whatever work that needs to be done so that you can feel strong in your ability to say yes and no, and is always going to be, I think, important. It's just being able to know yourself well.
Did you go through any period of relapse prior to your sobriety?
So, no. Well, prior to January 8th of 2009, I had been, mandated or asked to do various things because of the DUI, or in Alabama I got arrested without clothes a couple times, and so I had to do community service or go to AA groups and things like that. At no point though did I ever have any serious intent or desire to stay sober or take this seriously. My story is kind of bizarre in that I don't have relapse in my story. On January 10th of 2009, because those first 2 days were pretty rough, someone kind of introduced me to what could be a solution to my problem, and I said I'll give it a shot. When I got out, there was an outpatient. I still planned on drinking beer and smoking cannabis. That wasn't a problem. I just had a heroin problem, and the whiskey seemed to be bad. And then I had a counselor who I thought smoked cannabis too, because he had one of those little soul patches, and he had a bunch of New Orleans musicians on his wall, and I was like, oh, this dude's cool, he gets it. And he was like, look, man, it's a bad idea, but how about this? If you do this whole program, and you don't drink or smoke, and at the end of it you still want to, I'll give you $5 for your first beer. And I was like, all right, then I can give you 6 weeks. And I didn't hit him up for that $5. Was that the question? I don't remember what the question was, I'm sorry.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you again, Holland, for your story and what you shared about recovery. Again, we have some literature. We have some of the ministry members have tags on them, and you can certainly, if you feel free to talk one-on-one, maybe Holland can spend a few more minutes with us, maybe one-to-one with any of you who might like to ask. Again, there are some flyers out for our next event, which will be for second Tuesday of February. We love to see you again. I think, I want to thank you all for being with us tonight. And I'd like to close with prayer as we always do. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you again for Holland, for his story, for what he shared with us about this disease and recovery. It's difficult, and yet, Lord, you have provided in a magnificent path, and some of the most amazing people that many of us know are those who have come through this disease and are spiritual giants, and we just thank you for that, for the witness that they present for you. We'd like to now close in the words that your Son Jesus gave us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Mary, Queen of Peace, pray for us. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Please stay warm, drive safely home, and thank you all for attending tonight.